one of our meetings, we had occasion to draw attention to Mother's observation that for a teacher, it is not wise to want to make somebody else progress, because that would be arbitrary. I think some explanation is necessary for a fuller understanding of the position. What has been said applies only in the spiritual context, not to impose your ideas of discipline or progress on the disciple. It applies only to the Guru, a spiritual Guru. It does not apply to parents. Parents, having brought their children into existence, they have to own up their responsibility to the best of their ability to see that their wards are provided with constant guidance, whether the children want it or not, accept it or not. It is the duty of the parents to point out what is right and what is wrong. Their responsibility is constant. Even in the case of a spiritual teacher, though he does not interfere, still by the very fact that he has accepted somebody as his disciple, he erects unseen a kind of fence of protection within which the disciple is allowed to move, choosing his time, choosing his pace, but within the overall circle of protection. Having made this clear, we will move on to the next one or two topics from her mother's notes and reflections. The first topic is the mysteries of ascent towards God. There are many ways, many routes to God. We may or may not be able to appreciate the rightness or the necessity of many paths. But if we can take a little higher altitude and look at the diverse paths, we see a certain common thread of wanting to reach God. The way may be different, the direction may be different. Still, ultimately, the aim is the same. Seen from this large perspective, we find that the goal is the reality. Whether You call it nameless or you give it a name. Ultimately, it is one who has 1,000 names. In each religion, in each approach, the name may be different, and in some there may not be name at all. But still it refers to an eternal reality. And the purpose of life is to become conscious of that. Call it the self, call it God, call it whatever. And the mission of man is to manifest what he realizes of that. And in this, there are 3 categories of methods. The first method, we may call it broadly intellectual. There is a mental search for the absolute. Things are changing, things are moving, but there is something that perceives and wants to spot what does not change, what remains, what is the absolute behind the so many relatives. And in this process of observation, analysis, introspection, discrimination between the true and the false, between the fleeting and the permanent, the illusion of personality is dissolved. What we think is our personality is not anything constant. It is an illusion. And we have now realized that what we call ourselves externally is only a concentration of atoms. And when we analyze further, we find we are constituted of different levels of reality. There is the physical, there is the vital, there is the mental, and so on. And each level of substance has got its own law, its own determinism. That gives an illusion of continuity, because one law operates on one level, and that gives the sense of continuity. Naturally, when you move on to the other plane, another law intervenes. So we proceed in our intellectual analysis and research from depth to depth, from plane to plane, from relative to relative, till you come to the absolute, which is unchanging, which is eternal, and which is ineffable. Ineffable in the sense that reality, you find it is unthinkable. Your thinking mind cannot express it, cannot frame it in thoughts. It cannot be described either in human language, but still it can be known by not the mind but by identity. It may be unknowable, it may be unthinkable, but it is realizable by identity. Now that is the intellectual approach. The second one is characterized by love of God. Mostly all religions come in this category. There is an instant glimpse of the divine essence of things. And once that essence is glimpsed, there is an aspiration for it. You try to touch it, to realize it in everything. And the way is to surrender. Surrender oneself. And the result of true surrender is love. Love for the divine essence. And this love, as it gathers, brings about a detachment from what is not the divine essence. And this love of God also culminates in a kind of identification. At this stage of identification, the distinction between the lover and the beloved is no longer there. Even love, divine love also, acts as a veil between yourself and the object of your love. So it is a merger, a total identification and losing yourself in the beloved. That is called identification in the approach of love. The third category is love of humanity. You perceive that humanity has a claim on you, that God is in humanity, and you begin to consecrate yourself to the service of humanity. Give yourself in whatever way is open to you to the humanity. And Mother speaks of 3 or 4 domains in which this giving up of oneself to humanity proceeds. One is through material gifts, maybe through money, resources, whatever. The second is intellectual gifts. You share your knowledge, you share your ideas, you dole out what you have gained in pursuit of knowledge. Third is a spiritual gift. A spiritual gift is your contribution in way of harmony, beauty, and rhythm. But the largest and the widest gift is the integral gift, which is much more, and actually it combines in itself the material, the intellectual, and the spiritual, the integral gift of spirituality. And that is the gift of example. More than teaching, more than giving of things, more than emanating vibrations of harmony and beauty and rhythm, the example of embodying a spiritual consciousness, that is the greatest gift, an integral gift. And this example, the person who is such an example is not self-conscious that he is an example. He does not carry the feeling that I am a model, I am somebody whom so many follow or have to follow. That person is not at all self-conscious. He just is. He lives in the divine eternal consciousness. So, the true test of being an example, a divine example, is whether the person is aware of it. Aware, an active awareness. They are just, such persons are just, they are by themselves. They are themselves, that's all. That is as far as the mysteries of the ascent towards God. The second theme is for an ideal seeker. There have to be 2 parallel movements. The first movement is to become conscious of all the constituent elements of the being. We have the physical body, we have the vital energies, we have the emotions, we have the feelings and thoughts. Now each of them, they are all jumbled together. So for a seeker, spiritual seeker, it is incumbent to become conscious of each part of oneself. The body, the demands of the body, the movements of the body, why things are happening in the way they do, the insistencies of the vital, the direction in which they push you, the turbidity of the emotions, how they are mixed with self-interest, thoughts, how even many thoughts which are not yours at all play a large part in your life. Now this kind of analysis, observation, analysis and introspection helps one to sort out the different elements in one's being. And unless you can know what is what, there she says, you have to be very objective. You have to be merciless to yourself. Don't ever try to justify any movement in your being, movement of nature, giving any explanation. Observe it. You may be weak, but you must be fair. You must judge objectively and know what is wrong and what is right and what needs to be just rectified. So only this method enables you to know what you are piece by piece. And it is only by knowing that you can master. And she adds that you can command only what you have mastered. So you can impose your discipline of change, psychicization, transformation, whatever name you call it, on a part of your being only when you know what is to be changed, when you know what it is in its present state. The second movement, parallel to this, not as a result of this or consequent to this, but parallel is surrender, consecration to the divine law, the divine consciousness. You have to surrender. Now, she says, the two movements have to be together. You can't truly surrender unless you are in possession of what you want to surrender. And unless you sort out things, knowing for what purpose, you will be only obsessed with yourself. If I analyze my movements, it should be with a purpose that I want to change them. I want to consecrate them. Now when that background is there is a direction. Otherwise, I'll be always lost in observing my movements, in analyzing my movements, what we call self-obsessed person. So both the movements have to proceed side by side. The second consecration is not possible without a detailed work in the earlier one. The third theme is how we progress, how humanity progresses, maybe through certain few individuals, towards the supreme light. Ordinarily, we are conscious of only our sensations, or feelings and thoughts excited by our sensations. And our entire life is organized in this framework of sensations. It is a mark of progression, it's a mark of education, spiritual education, to become conscious that there are other spheres of life. The sensational is only the beginning. There are others. And they also have a claim. Thus, to expand our awareness from beyond the sensational dimension of life and possess the whole arc of our life. That is the first step. To possess ourselves, to know ourselves. That, she says, it is a candlelight. She compares it to a candlelight. Which includes awareness of ourselves on earth. Most of our dealings are based on earth awareness. So this awareness of earth and earth consciousness is a candlelight. But then earth is not everything. There is a larger universe. The terrestrial frame is very small compared to the vast universal context. And when you enter into conscious contact with that universal consciousness, your candlelight turns into gaslight. But the universe itself is not all. The universe is a creation. The universe is a changing proposition. So beyond the universe, just as surrounding the earth there is the universe, beyond and transcending the universe, there is the eternal. And to enter into conscious contact with the eternal is the electric light. And when all these lights are combined, you are aware of the earth dimension, the universal dimension, the eternal dimension. Then the supreme light is kindled for man. So, candle, gas light, electric light, and supreme light. These are various grades of light. Light is one, but it grades itself, it forms itself according to the receptive consciousness. This is the journey towards the supreme light. Now that brings us to the close of her period of existence in France. And she is ready to leave for India, which opens the most important phase of her life. We have already known how mother's life can be studied in 12-year periods. The first period, which was about more than 12 years, between 12 and 16 or 18, was devoted to the development of her consciousness. From childhood, she was aware, self-aware, and in everything she developed her consciousness. The second period was devoted to the development of her vital existence, vital being. And this includes the aesthetic side, art, music, and a keen study of sensations, which led her to the study of occultism. So this was the second period. The third period, say between 1908 to 1920, was for intensive mental development. She was always developing the mind, but an intensive mental development may be said to have started in 1908, when, with the arrival of Paul Richard. And she says the mental development went at a very fast pace before 1914, when she came to Sri Aurobindo. 10 years of intensive mental development and studies led her to Sri Aurobindo, 1914 to 1920. Though she had to go from here and be in Japan, that intellectual development continued. And it was only, say, after 1920 that the fourth period, the spirit of spiritual development, may be said to start. We have covered in a way the first period of development of consciousness, beginning with the experience of light over her head when she was 5, and the second period of vital development, which started even before she was 12, when she started painting, music, and occultism. Even before she met Thion, she had her own experiences and encounter with the occult knowledge, and it reached its finale only with Madame Thion, contact with whom may be said to have started in 1905 or so. Thereafter, the intellectual period. We have known how many thousands of books she had read, particularly once when she was in bed for 6 months. She has said an incredible number of books. And she had, her interests were very large, not just philosophy, but science, mathematics, and history. She was particularly interested. And from the next session, we will come over to her journey from Paris to India and thereafter. As you know, she arrived here in March, on March 29, 1914, when she was already 36, what she called in the middle of her age. We will deal with this gradually, without hurry, in our studies hereafter.